Everyone. Welcome back to another episode of Dojo Live. I am Tulio Siragusa, streaming from Los Angeles. And I am joined today by my co host, Carlos Ponce, who is in Mexico City, as well as our guest, Lomit Patel. Lomit, where are you streaming from today? I think you're in Northern California, right?
Yeah, I'm streaming from San Francisco.
San Francisco. Awesome. We've got all of California pretty much represented right here. Thank you for joining us today, and we're looking forward to getting to know you. I'm particularly curious to learn about your company, and but before we go into that, I'd like you to introduce yourself. Tell us a little bit about you. Tell us a little bit about Lomit for the audience sake, and then we'll go and talk about IMVU. So, Lomit, please tell us a little bit about you.
Yeah, so quick background on me. I've worked in startups for over 20 years. Primarily, I'm usually like one of the first people that sort of joins a startup. And my role there is to really help to figure out how we're going to grow the business. So it's primarily around how do we acquire customers and how do we make money and figure out the business model. And I've been fortunate to have worked at several startups that have ended up going on to becoming successful either by getting acquired and or going IPO. And currently I'm working at a startup called IMVU, which is the world's largest avatar-based social networking app. And beyond that, I'm also a best-selling author. I just had a book that came out a couple of months ago called Lean AI, which talks about how companies can grow significantly faster using artificial intelligence.
Well, let me welcome. That's a fantastic, fun job, right? You're no pressure, making things happen for a startup. Someone's always said in a startup, you're always in that sweet spot, somewhere between becoming a unicorn or going bankrupt. That's the kind of edge you live on all the time. Yeah. Congratulations on the book. I am curious about IMVU. I mean, you said something about avatar-based social networking, right? So I keep thinking about this idea of already today there's an aspirational version of ourselves on Facebook or Instagram or everywhere else, right? By aspirational version, I mean we put out the best foot forward all the time, with the exception of a few who are a little bit more authentic than others. So this is like a whole nother level. This is like, yeah. I now get to put please tell us a bit about the company. I don't want to steal your thunder. IMVU, tell us about your company.
Yeah, so IMVU has actually been around almost 15 years. It started out as a desktop app, but now, we're really big on mobile. So it's across desktop and mobile. But the whole premise around MVU is that it's a social avatar-based social networking app, which means that you create an avatar, and then through that avatar, you can create all these different virtual worlds that you aspire to, and you can make lots of different friends from across the world. We've had over 200 million registered users, so there's a lot of people you can hang out with and kind of live that aspirational life and that alter ego version of the life that you'd want to live, that you might not be able to live, as you mentioned, on like real social networks. Because for the most part, it's kind of based on what your real life is, and at MVU, it's kind of based on your aspirational life.
Interesting. So, would it be safe? Well, let's go right into the topic before I ask all my questions, because I'm very curious. Carlos, what's the topic that Lomit has chosen for today? Let's kick off this conversation.
Absolutely, Tulio. Thank you so much. Well, today we're going to be speaking about Lean AI, lean artificial intelligence, right? Or as Lomit has put it, how innovative startups are use artificial intelligence to grow. So that's the topic that Lomit chose for today. So Lomit, just tell us and our audience, tell us why did you choose this particular topic for today's conversation?
Yes, I chose this topic primarily because it's actually based on my own personal journey. I've been at MVU for just under 4 years, and when I joined them, just like with any other company that I've worked at, when it comes to startups, the big challenge is trying to figure out how you're going to grow and acquire customers, and figure out how you're going to become profitable and make money. And when I joined MVU, it was at a situation where the company was actually going in the wrong direction. Growth had really stalled. So for me, it was an opportunity coming in to really figure out how we could we could turn the business around and do it in a way where, you know, we could do it thinking differently from the way most companies go about acquiring customers. And so I'd always been fascinated around the area of artificial intelligence and automation. And, you know, I really had the opportunity at IMVU to really put that thinking into practice. And so that's what my book has really been based on, because it talks about exactly how startups can really leverage AI and automation, and it kind of levels the playing field to really give them the competitive advantage to kind of go out and get better, faster, and smarter around growing that business with less risk, and to do it in a way where there's more predictability around, you know, that whole journey, as you'd mentioned, between being a startup and trying to become a unicorn, which is what every startup's dream is ultimately.
Okay, so we're going to get back to IMVU shortly, but I'd like to learn, based on the principles of your book and the topic today, what are some key ways that organizations can use AI to grow their business? What are some key things that are working today? You know, not pipe dream ideas of a concept that might happen in 10 years, but stuff that's working right now that organizations ought to look into.
That's a really good question. And so what I based the book on was actually an actual use case that not only provides value today, which is, you know, how do you spend your budget as efficiently as possible? Because ultimately, you know, most companies, when you want to grow, you have to invest some money into different platforms, whether you're spending money on advertising on Google, Facebook, or a number of different partners to try and help you to attract the right type of customers that you want to attract into your product that will ultimately become your most highly valuable customers, and enable you to kind of leverage those customers to increase going out and spreading the word of mouth, so that, you know, for each customer that you acquire is going to end up bringing in and telling their friends about the product because they like it, and it will naturally have that virality effect of growing the business. And so, you know, the use case there is most of these platforms, whether it's Google, Facebook, and a slew of other places where people spend money right now, they have some form of AI and automation built into those platforms. But the big difference is a lot of that is self-serving. So, you know, Google's goal is for you to spend more money with Google, just like Facebook's goal is for you to spend more money with Facebook. As long as you give them certain types of data, they're able to at least help you automate and optimize most of that campaign. But the big difference is between that and the next level up is you need to try and create your own layer of AI and intelligence that sits between you and these different platforms where you're spending your money, where, you know, where the machine is able to figure out in real time, you know, where you should be spending the money, as opposed to telling everyone that they've got this money to spend from you. The difference is they actually have to earn the right of getting the money, because it's based on real-time performance, that the machine is changing budgets, optimizing creatives, and running all of these different experiments across the entire customer journey, so that, you know, it's enabling you as the business to get better about learning what works and what doesn't work, so that you're able to make changes in real time.
So Lomit, I mean, there's real-time bidding platforms out there that allow you to set parameters who basically will bid on automatically for at least for advertising purposes on adverts and matching up the content that are using AI. Are you suggesting that companies are to invest in building their own, or they should leverage these platforms that are out there?
So what I'm advocating for is that, as you mentioned, all of these bidding platforms exist, but the big difference is, you know, you would want to build something or leverage a system that sits between you and all of these different bidding platforms, because ultimately you want something that can change and automate the levers as far as increasing bids, reducing bids, shifting budgets or reducing budgets, increasing the number of like creative testing that you want to do, or reducing the testing you want to do, and, you know, optimizing that based on, you know, which countries you're basing that on as well. So, you know, so ideally, you've got a system that kind of sits on top of all the other systems that have their bidding strategies, but it's controlling those bidding strategies to work based on your data across the entire ecosystem versus how it's just doing in those individual systems in silos.
That's an interesting take on it. Historically, it's been a complex kind of a thing, right? So it's easy to go to vendors that have made those investments, that have built those platforms, and there's value that they're pitching to, a company about why they should. What I'm hearing though is it's become more common to build AI-based solutions that you should probably look at something in-house that can help you, give you a more inward point of view of how you're using these solutions that are not necessarily skewed to whatever partners those guys have, right? Because even though it's real-time bidding, they're not completely neutral. It's always based on whatever partnership they've stricken up that gives them the best deals, etc. So you're saying is keep these things honest by investing in the platform that you can control in-house. Is that correct? And who's doing that? Are there companies doing that today?
I was going to say you're exactly correct in terms of like summarizing, the key point of what I'm saying. And to answer your question, not a lot of companies are doing this right now. And that's what I came to find out, because I speak a lot about this topic at conferences. And, we started doing this probably about 2.5 years ago at IMVU. And what I came to realize is that there's only a small number of companies that are really doing this. And the ones that are actually doing this right now have huge teams supporting this. So examples being like Netflix, Lyft, and Uber, and these companies that spend, hundreds of millions of dollars have made investments into doing this stuff. But what I came to figure out is that you can actually build a lean system that can do a lot of this, where you don't need all of these resources, because ultimately having all these resources becomes a handcuff. Because it requires a lot of investment to try and maintain and upkeep these systems. And so, a better way to do it is, instead of trying to build this, try to find partners that have potentially, built elements of this, so you can kind of, integrate it into your system and try to work through that. And that's what we ended up doing. We ended up going with a partner that had done some of this, but it wasn't completely what we wanted it to be. But I worked with them really closely to personalize their system to work for us, so that a lot of the emphasis around maintaining and the upkeep of the system didn't land on us. It landed on the partner, because there's a lot of work that goes into upkeeping these systems as well.
Yeah, I bet. So that brings us full circle. You said when you joined, the company was a bit flat in terms of growth. Yep. Now you're reaching over 200 million users on the platform, on the social network. How much growth happened as a result of taking control of how you actually, used advertising or spent to acquire users after you put this in place? Is there something that you guys saw that was measurable? And what are some key lessons that other companies could learn from that perhaps, what are some of the key levers, if you will, that should say, we ought to look at that because of this? If you don't mind, we'd love to learn that for what's worked with you guys.
Yeah, so for us, there's a couple of metrics that we look at, which is probably similar to how other businesses look at growth. One is around the cost to acquire a customer, and the other one is around what's your return on investment on the money that you're spending. And the third part is, how long does it take for us to recoup back that money that we're spending to acquire customers? So just to give you kind of some quick high level results, on our cost to acquire a customer, we saw, once we started automating and using AI to do a lot of these processes. So what happened is, I used to have a team that was really doing a lot of this work, and we moved away from having humans doing this to just having machines doing this. So we're able to become really lean. And so my team now is around 4 people. Before, it was a lot bigger than that, because we needed more people to manage all these different processes and tasks. And And so, once we've automated everything, our cost to acquire a customer went down over almost like 4x. So we saw a huge decline, and we've continued to see that cost continue to stay down, which has been great. Even though we've continued to expand and spend a lot more every month, we still have seen efficiencies coming from that. And then the other thing is the return on investment. We've seen that go up over 3.5x on our investment, and so that's been great for us too. And all of this has happened over the course of like the past 2.5 years when we started automating and applying AI into really making a lot of these decisions for us. And then the third part, which is the most important thing for any business, as you guys can relate, is cash flow, right? Because cash flow is the blood line of any business. And so before, when we used to spend money on trying to acquire customers, it used to take us like 4 to 6 months to recoup that money back. And now it takes us 30 days to recoup back over 100% of our spend. So literally now we're in the business of recycling money, where we're spending money, we're acquiring customers, then we're recouping that money back. So we're using that same money to continue to grow the business, which helps us because especially in this day and age where companies are challenged for cash flow and or startups. The other challenge for startups is having to raise money all the time, right? So if you've got a good growth engine in place that it provides provides more predictability that you're going to be able to get that money back, then there's less elements of needing to go back up and keep raising money, which has actually unfortunately got a lot of companies into trouble, which is why there've been so many layoffs, because companies try to grow really fast, but as they continue to grow fast, they weren't keeping an eye on the cost to acquire customers, and so the cost wasn't really profitable based on the revenue that was coming in and the time frame to recoup that.
Lomit, I'd like to ask you a question. Sorry to chime in, Tulio.
Yeah,
I know we're talking about specifically about artificial intelligence and the startup world, but I'd like to take advantage of your being here to ask you one question about IMVU, if I may, specifically about IMVU. I'm curious about because of the world that you offer through IMVU is by definition it's a virtual world. It's a digital realm, right?
Yeah.
And it doesn't. Right now, in this day and age, and what we're living out there, what's happening in the world, it doesn't get any more digital than that. So my question for you regarding IMVU is: have you seen like a spike in users and user number, or how has this flow of digital users and virtual settings somehow affected positively or negatively, or however you want to phrase it, what you're doing with IMVU? Have you seen like a change in trends? What's happening in the world of virtual with IMVU in this day and age?
That's a really good question, Carlos, and let me answer that in a couple of different ways. One is that we were already growing, before the coronavirus sort of hit, and generally, once the stay-at-home shelter situations went into place, we've actually seen a bigger increase in usage. So we've seen probably a spike around 60 to 70% more growth in the last 8 to 9 weeks than even before, and we were growing at a pretty rapid rate. A joke being, the thing that we had to worry about was increasing capacity to instead of laying people off. Our challenge has been increasing server capacity to manage all of these increased number of users that we're getting in. And then as far and the reason being, and all of us can relate to this, is that at the end of the day, humans need connection, right? And so the more isolated we get, we need to find other outlets where we can connect with other users, whether it's through the social networks that are out there. But the challenge with social networks is that, if people are just putting the best version of their lives, it kind of makes you feel like you're having a bad day, right? Because you're just seeing the best, montage of whatever's great about them. So that's actually, while when people come to IMVU, everybody's having a great time because everybody's putting an aspirational version of who they want to be, you know, whether they want to like party in like some private Greek island, or they want to, you know, have a penthouse or whatever. You know, people are making friends, and they're having that social connection. So that's doing really well. The other thing that I wanted to bring up, you know, that really helped us grow is, and I don't know if you guys have probably noticed this too, is when a lot of the coronavirus started hitting, and you mentioned, you know, all of these exchanges where we spend money, whether it's Google, Facebook, it's all real-time bidding, it's all ad exchanges. The first thing most advertisers did, about 80 to 90%, pulled out their budget. They all took a pause, you know, and so there was a window when they did that. Our machine is looking at real-time data signals in terms of like what's the supply and demand in these exchanges, and it was able to tell us in real time that the cost of, like, you know, CPMs and CPIs went down as much as 75% at any given time. And so instead of us pulling back, a machine always has the flexibility, because we kind of run on an open budget as long as we're able to hit our goals. So it kind of just told us that this is an opportunity. You know, can we go in and spend more? And we said yes. And so all I had to do was go back to my executive team, because, you know, they've got really high confidence in this machine that we use now, and just show them the forecast. Hey, this is what we're spending on our budget. This was our second half budget. Can we pull this budget forward based on, you know, the fact we're going to recoup all this money back in like 30 days? And so we started increasing our spend, consequently around 70 to 80% as well, to correlate with the increased demand that we were seeing. So most people, you know, in social networks have seen a lot of increase coming in, but a lot of that came organically, right? We got the organic users, but we also got the paid users on top. So we've got a bigger explosion than somebody like Facebook and Twitter, relatively, because a lot of them, unfortunately, make a lot of their money through advertising. So, you know, the point is their CPMs have gone down. So they're making less money per user with all these users that are coming into their platform. With us, we make most of our money, I didn't bring this point up, is through in-app purchases, or people buy IMVU credits, or they buy these subscription offerings on IMVU to try and, you know, create these virtual worlds. So, you know, for us, we have high predictability on the revenue we're able to generate, because less of it comes from advertising. And even on the advertising side, there's one pivot that we made a couple of years back, which was to go more into performance advertising. So people are actually advertisers pay us to try and get users to take rewarded videos or fill out surveys or take some kind of actions to earn these IMVU credits. So we have high predictability that will make some decent money on advertising versus branded advertising. We never really did a lot of branded advertising on our platform. So what happened is now a lot of advertisers are pivoting more toward performance advertising. So now we've seen an increase in our advertising revenue as well, because we're getting so much more users. Yeah.
Interesting. Interesting. I want to go back to something. You said something really critically important, I think. SaaS models are definitely the way to go for speed. It's obvious. There's not a tremendous amount of investment up front, time needed up front. You can get up and running pretty quickly. And initially, it was created to be nothing but the ability to get there quickly. And then there's a moment where it made sense to build in-house or create an enterprise type solution. At least that's how the thinking was, I don't know, 15, 20 years ago.
Yeah.
But it's become the model, right, that everyone's adopted. It's stuck because it's not so easy to then transfer over from a SaaS platform to your own. But what I heard you say is, which is, you know, contrary to this whole cloud strategy, right? What I heard you say is, if you take the time to invest in an in-house solution, don't think short term, because you may never actually get the benefit of having an ROI in 3 months after you spent 2.5 years building something. So how do you go about balancing that if you're a startup, right? Because you're trying to figure out what's going to stick. And so part of the challenge is always, do I do this and build something that I'm not sure is going to stick? I might have to pivot in 1.5 years. How do you make those choices so that you build something that is worth that you should do and invest over a period of time that's going to give you great benefits 2 years from now? Because I heard you say that, and then correct me if I'm wrong, it did take you guys 2 years to build it. Now you're getting the benefit from it, but that required a long-term mindset and strategy that often a lot of startups shy away from. How did you guys get through that challenge?
So like I say, Rome wasn't built in a day, right?
Right.
but the other thing I was going to mention is that what we did was kind of a hybrid strategy. So let me clarify. This intelligent machine that we end up using now, I ended up kind of going down the SaaS route with a partner that potentially had the nuts and bolts but wasn't completely there. So I worked with them and got them to really tailor this solution to really work for us, because I had a lot of the relationships with all these different partners, so I could set up a lot of the API connections, and and really get them to customize it to start thinking the way that I wanted the machine to think, and train the algorithm to think like a growth marketer would think, versus thinking like some of the other ways where it's just about increasing the budget spend without specific optimizing to revenue goals or to acquiring a customer goals. But the big difference, and I think, Carlos, I didn't answer your question completely, to which is the thing that a company needs to invest into to really take advantage of AI is a good customer data platform, which is make sure you have all your customer data. And when I started at IMVU, our data was in silos. Like, we had data living in so many different databases. So the key was trying to integrate it all into one place, into one source. Because once you have your data in one place, that's kind of your treasure trove. That's kind of your secret sauce. Once you have that data, and then you can layer and tap into, whether it's a SaaS AI platform, you get to control it, because all those platforms rely on the data. So as long as you control the data and you integrate it well, and that's the investment that needs to be made for any startup, is get your data integrated into one place, so that once you have the data integrated, then you can either work through a different SaaS platform to take advantage of the AI. And if you don't spend that much money, then you could just work directly with Google or Facebook, but at least you're giving them the right data to try and help them to optimize towards the outcomes that you're looking to grow your business. But ultimately, once your business, for me, what I found the magic number is probably around $150,000 a month. Once you're spending that kind of money, you're getting enough data in where you don't want to, where you want to be using a AI intelligent machine that's more customized to you, versus just giving those budgets directly to the different partners to get the most efficient return on your spend.
So we're coming up on time. I want to see if I can capture 3 key things that I've heard, right? Number 1, invest in a good data strategy. Very key, critical, important thing to do. Make sure you got all your ducks in a row in terms of data. Number 2, invest as much as you can in automation. Automate as many processes, as many things that you can, because those dependencies on human interaction will slow you down. And 3, find partners that are going to be flexible enough to work with you to customize something that meets your need. All those 3, is the third probably the hardest one in your opinion? Which of those 3 is the hardest one?
The third is the hardest one, because ultimately, finding the right partner, it's like getting married, right? It takes a while. You got to date, and then got to get engaged, and then before you end up taking that final step. And so for finding the right partner, I feel that that's where you want to do most of your due diligence, to really kind of look at a track record of who you potentially are going to be doing this partnership with, and figure out, more importantly, how much resources do they have to invest into that product. Because wherever you start with them, with AI, everything moves and changes so quickly that you want to be working with a partner that is agile enough to continue to grow as your business grows, and the marketplace changes with new forms of AI coming in, so that you can both grow together, and that you don't end up outgrowing that solution where then you need to start looking for another solution in a couple of years.
Lomit, it's been a pleasure to have you. It sounds like people ought to pick up your book, Lean AI. There's a lot of lessons to learn there. I'm looking forward to reading it myself. And finally, if you haven't tried IMVU.com, you should, because it sounds like reality TV, and reality is just too real right now, right? So maybe a little fantasy is what's in order. You know, maybe a little avatar creating a reality that's made up, that's a little more fun, is exactly what we all need a little bit of. So I highly encourage those who haven't checked that out to check it out. That sounds like a lot of fun. 200 million people obviously think so. So thanks for joining us, Lomit. It's been a pleasure. Any other questions, Carlos? Otherwise, who do we have coming up on the dojo tomorrow?
Absolutely. Tomorrow, Tulio, we're going to be having a conversation. We're going to be touching a little bit on the travel tech space, and that is because, as you know, because of the COVID situation, travel tech has been hit heavily, travel in general, and hospitality. So to enlighten us a little bit of what's going on and what the expectations are, we're gonna be speaking with Dr. Aurora Benton. She is the founder and CEO of Astrapto. Astrapto is a travel tech company, a platform with a very unique focus on solutions to social and environmental issues in hospitality, events, and travel. So it should be interesting. You know, it's a little what we're going to be talking about today. And the topic specifically is going to be your sustainability legacy, lame excuses, or lasting impact. And that is tomorrow, right here on Dojo Live at 1 p.m. Pacific, Tulio.
Thanks for joining us, everyone. Lomit, please stay with us as we go off the air. Thank you. Sure. See you guys tomorrow.
Thank you.
Right.